Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, or whatever it is, whatever you are. If you're joining us from Mars, Nanu, or however you say hello. If you're joining from anywhere else, thank you for being here. Last show of the year. You get 3 weeks off me. If you're going to be happy about it, think about my ex-wives. Anyways, thanks for joining us today. It's going to be a wonderful show. I have very, very short intro on my own because I have no shows coming up until January 9th. We'll publish all that on the different platforms as we go in the next couple of weeks. But today, final show of the year. It's been billed that the insights from the year that was, and it's been relabeled Juicy Bits from the cutting room floor, where you get to see all this stuff that we did not say, did not think, did not put anywhere earlier this year, going into next year. Things that you will not hear about. You will not hear predictions. You will not hear relapses. You will hear recounts. And most important part of this, hopefully, you will not hear anything about the Dark Lord that shall not be named, that has 2 letters. One is one and the other one is the other one. So we're not going to talk about that stuff. Let me bring my guest one by one so they can say hello. Okay.
Hello.
Jesus Christ, people. They have
Lauren's so nice. Lauren's like, hello. I'm
oh
like,
my God.
I was on mute. God.
You have the energy of like an 85-year-old at 6 p.m. It's like, oh, is it 2 hours past my bedtime already?
Lauren's like,
It's 8 p.m. for me.
Yeah, you're like, it's
no,
late.
that's okay.
It's beer 30. I gotta go. Yeah.
So we have one more person coming whose technology has been
He's fashionably late.
No, actually, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but a certain technology provider that delivers bandwidth to his house decided to do some work, so he's trying to connect via other methods to get it.
Oh no!
So let's not talk about Comcast that way. I'm sorry, about the provider that way. So, anyways, thank you for being here, everybody. As you know, you are the co-host. You're the gems. You're the reason this thing goes. Not you. You're
not me. Okay, good.
Yeah. So,
Lauren. Okay, good. I was like,
Lauren and Alan so far, So
yeah, I was like, it's Lauren's she's the good one. Yeah.
And just so you know, today I get to actually pay attention because we had the incomparable, ubiquitous. That's a word that is fun to say when you're from this country. Brent Leary working in the background, putting comments and taking on charge of all the other technology stuff. So when John gets here, I'm sure Brent will add it to the feed as we go. So let's get started. Who wants to be the first one to tell me what you guys did not say this year that you think should have been said, should have been explicitly told? Alan, you raise your finger. Unless you tell me
I did not have Mork and Mindy on my Esteban Kolsky bingo card for this show. I just need to say that right up front. In his intro, he said,
right? I don't know.
That's true. That's right. That is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is this versus that, right? Yeah, okay.
Right.
Well, we do what we can to keep the show entertaining. So
got to keep it spicy.
So but seriously, let's get started. The whole premise of the show was to create great conversations so people can get whatever they want out of that, which we call whispered or insights, right? I wanted to do the show about like your biggest insight or lesson learned or whisper for the year, whatever you want to call it. Let's start with Lauren, who seems like to be tired. We want to make sure
the responsible one. Yeah, she's the responsible one.
From the 4 people on this feed right now, Lauren is the only one that we didn't play the disclaimer at the intro for, just so you know.
And she's got the best background. That bookcase
I know.
is spectacular.
I'm like just going to investigate the background the whole time. It's so awesome.
It tells everything about me. As my daughter also said, it shows my repressed childhood as well. So maybe I shouldn't be showing that in a professional setting. Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Catholic, but okay. So Lauren, seriously, what's something that you wish we would have discussed or talked or done something with this year that we probably didn't?
I don't think it's what we didn't discuss. I think it's the fact that we keep having the same discussions around the foundational elements of what it takes, for tech to work, for tech to be embedded in culture, integrated in culture. and it just feels like we're just having the same conversations over and over again. I sometimes wish you wouldn't call it whispered insights, but like screamed insights. I don't know. At this point, what do we do to get the message through?
But do you see an evolution on these foundational elements, or you don't see an evolution? Because if you're having the same conversations that we did 20 years ago,
I don't think we, like you and I don't think we're having the same conversations. I think we are in the midst of the same, or a lot of the same conversations. I do think there is a more healthy appetite to talk about consequences, where I don't think that existed before. I also think that there is, and I think we've talked a lot in our episodes in particular about culture and how to shape the culture, and that the superficial isn't going to work anymore, and bringing your authentic selves is a joke. And so what are we doing? I'm sorry. What are we doing to actually call what is happening, what it is, and being truthful with one another and holding those multiple truths and perspectives? And I think that's an evolution, but it still comes down to those conversations are still being had in the same circles within the same, I guess, provocations.
do you agree, Liz?
I'm a downer. What's
No,
that?
you're not done.
No, I totally agree.
My role here is like, hold on, let me bring John into the feed. Hey, John.
Yes, John. There he is.
Welcome back. We already rake Comcast through the call, so you don't have to. Don't worry, you're good.
Thank you.
Getting spicy.
We were just getting started, and I asked Lauren the first question, and she basically said that what seems to be happening is that we're having the same conversations over and over and over again, and and we were going to get into having the same conversation, no pun intended, haha, woo, saying like, is this really what we're seeing? I mean, are we seeing evolution? I mean, do you see an evolution, Liz, at all, or you don't? I mean,
I think I don't necessarily know if it's an evolution. I just think it's different people having the senior conversations, because we just keep rolling everybody through. It's like every time we bring in a new group of leaders, there's this revelation that everyone has about the foundational pieces of the business that I guess they just didn't think to have the conversation when they were stuck in the weeds and, just trying to get everything done. So I think that we do keep having the same conversation. I do think that we keep adding elements of, okay, like if we just solved the little thing, maybe we could have a different conversation. So I do think some things get knocked off the list, but I love what Lauren just said about, I think we've just over-indexed on talking about culture as if culture was going to fix everything. And it was almost like, 5 years ago, cloud was going to fix everything. 5 years before that, digital was going to fix everything. 5 years before that, getting your right URL was going to fix it. It's we keep diminishing the hard stuff into little catchphrases, little words, alphabet soup.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think it's really hard to tackle what's really going on, which is either we don't want to prioritize the hard stuff because the hard stuff can fail, and failure is still bad. Talk about a cultural issue that we can't quite figure out. Everyone talks about fail fast and fail forward, but we don't actually do that. No one's actually rewarded for failing fast and failing forward, right? It's like this myth. So instead, we sit there and we come up with all the reasons why something can't possibly done, and then we just put lipstick on the pig and slap some duct tape on it, cross our fingers, and away we go. I mean, listen, I'm a marketer by trade, by nature, by choice, by accident, whatever. And since I started in marketing 30 years ago, we've all been chasing this stupid word called personalization. We don't define it. We don't actually stop running long enough to be like, what does personalization actually mean for me, my organization, or my customer? We just chase after it like manically. And we're like, oh my God, I've got to have it. I'm going to have variable data print. It's going to be so cool. It's going to change everything I do. And then we just resign ourselves to mail merging and we call it a day. So we don't actually fix anything. We just cross some weird thing off our line item and we're like, but so I don't necessarily know if there's an evolution. But, earlier you said, what are the two letters that I don't want to hear about again? And yes, I don't want to hear about the Voldemort of technology. I don't want to hear about that. But I also don't want to hear everyone arguing over who gets to own CX. And Esteban, you and I go off about this all the dang time, right? If I have one more conversation with someone in a contact center about how they're so proud of themselves because they own customer experience, I'm just going to start saying naughty words out loud all the dang time.
People that can't even fucking own their own breakfast order, they want to own CX. Okay, they go to Starbucks and they don't know what to order, but they're going to own and manage CX for the level.
They're going to own it, and technology is going to manage it. So like that's even worse. Like we've gotten ourselves into such a hole where we've convinced ourselves. Okay, ran the disclaimer. I could say it now. Okay, so we've somehow convinced ourselves that in order to save our individual jobs and our individual role, and to not feel like we're getting relegated to the dustbin of corporate America, we're going to adopt two letters and say that we own it. So you might own technology's data, Voldemort. You might own that now, and you're going to be a chief blah blah officer. And you're going to need a fancy title, and you're going to need all this stuff. You're going to be the chief CX officer. And you know what you're going to own? You're going to own one function, and you're going to go out and buy 5 technologies. None of it's going to work. And you're going to sit there on the same dust heap you didn't want to be on, wondering.
Hold on. You forgot one part. And in 24 months, when the one function, when 5 technologies that you own are irrelevant again, then you're going to be absolutely destined to the dustbin.
Or even better. When you went out with your credit card and didn't bother to talk to anyone else in the organization, right? But you went out armed with your credit card to get your air miles, right? You didn't want to do that. You went out and bought some SaaS technology, you implemented it, and then your sassy implementation just caused a major data breach. And what do? You stick your head in the sand and you're like, I don't know what happened. I mean, it's just a mess.
So John,
I'm going to go pout in the corner.
so John, and then Alan, I have a better question for you, but let's put this one to end, this juicy bit to end. I mean, you and I have a similar career in the sense that people that we interacted with and places that we've been and everything. And we've seen these people grow from sub-underling to the janitor to chief blah blah officer, to use Lisa's terms, right? So what do you say about this? I mean, is this really an issue that continues to exist? People having the same conversations because they don't learn in the lower levels, or because they don't care, because they don't pay attention,
Right. Let me know if my volume is weird. Hope it's okay.
You're good.
Cool. Well, change is fundamentally hard. And one of the things that's such bullshit in our industry is how people talk about being revolutionary and being change agents as if that's going to get you organizational rewards and kudos. That'll just as soon get you a pink slip as anything. And so, change in a true organizational sense is a very rare phenomenon. And I think we have to understand that. But at the same time, there are encouraging signs, and there's always people pushing for change and rolling forward and rolling back. But I would say that what's changing is mostly on the outside of companies, and I'm going to argue that most of that at the moment isn't very good. And I'm sorry that AI utopians and stuff watching this. I'm sorry for those people, but that's not AI and all its automagicalness is not helping us. It's actually potentially hurting us. But let me just finish. So the problems are, first of all, to what extent can we have these high-level wonderful enterprise conversations we're having like we are right now, when the outside world is basically going to shit? I mean, okay, that's overstating it, but every company refers to macroeconomic headwinds, so I'm obviously not making this up. Global turmoil, the impact of disinformation on democracy. To what extent can we operate in bubbles? And the other thing that I'm most concerned about is customers need to hear from outlier voices and have the kind of conversations we're having today. And those conversations are getting harder to surface because in the sort of big tech world that we live in now, like the kind of insights I use in quotes that show up on our feeds are just caught up in all this stream of branded bullshit. And one of the big questions for next year in my mind is, where are the good conversations going to happen? Outside, LinkedIn live events are really good, but mostly LinkedIn's a promotional cesspool. Where are the good conversations going to happen? Because I'd like to have them.
So two things. First of all, I want to quote from the Harry Potter movies, the last one, the Deathly Hallows, when Professor McGonagall says, "The name is AI. If it's going to kill us all, might as well say its name." So if the AI is going to really take over and kill us all, might as well use the name. But I hate the fucking name anyways. And second, it's like, I want to get back to this thing of where the conversation is going to happen. But I think that one of the things that actually, going back to your initial thing where juicy bits from the cutting room floor. Alan.
I can't keep up with all the things I was supposed to talk about.
No. Narratives.
No.
Right?
Well, one of the reasons this show started in the first place was to have conversations that may not be happening elsewhere. When we talk about how do you measure success, those KPIs were like created like 30 or 40 years ago, and yet we're still stuck with the same KPIs. So is it a wonder that we're not, that we're having the same conversations all the time? If you add to that the fact that one word that I've learned from you, Esteban, that anybody who's talked to me over the last 3 or 4 years has heard me say outcomes, and we stop looking at what is the outcome and we look at the KPI, which was tied to a solution, not necessarily the outcome, right? So personalization is a solution, but is that the outcome we're looking for marketing, just as an example? And tied to, if you look at there's this 3-month cycle that public companies have that they can't do change. Change is hard because it's scary, and if I do something differently and it fails, I'm going to lose. So I mean, if I do something the same and it fails, I don't lose. So what I look at the whole industry and how do you have these long conversations is we have to rebuild a muscle. There's a stamina in terms of, I always say it's like we're having a conversation with people, but we're pushing them with the parking brake on. So we move a little forward, but then as soon as we stop any type of engagement with that conversation, they stop because they don't know how to do it. I think what Whispered Insights was created for is to help people build that stamina, to help them have that longer exploration of a topic. And here's the scary part. We don't know where the exploration is going to go, but it's worth going in that direction. People are afraid to have a conversation about something that they don't already know the answer to. Right?
Do you agree, Lauren?
And so.
No, yeah. I mean, do you agree, Lauren? Do you think that we don't know where the exploration goes? More than important, when he said people don't want to change because they're afraid, do you agree with that, or do you think it's something else? You spend the most time from probably, than me for sure, but all of us working on that and figure it out. You got a fucking PhD on this, sorry, an exceptionally well-crafted PhD on that shit, So,
well, I think that we, not we, like not us, but like I think in general, there's this lack of courage, right? There's the, it's not just fear. It's do I have the courage to go out and take a different view, to back another insight, to understand a different perspective, to take the time to do X, right? Because if I do that, I'm going to be left behind. I need to put on a good show. I need to like fake it till I make it. All of those, like Liz said, all of those little catchy sayings, right? That we have, we've taken snackable as like this awful thing that's like, t-shirt sayings with glitter and rainbows, and saying that's the way in which we need to, move through life, move through our workplace. And I think that what Alan's saying is completely spot on. I just don't think we have the spaces, right, that are encouraging environments for the courage that needs to be undertaken.
Isn't that what you were saying, John, that we need more of those spaces to have these conversations?
Yeah, to borrow from Alan's narrative, we need a counter narrative. We need a counter narrative that it's cool to try to improve things and that it's hard, but it's worth it. And we need to create some sex appeal around that and some excitement around that. That's not about techno excitement, but about genuine excitement for making the world better, raising people to their full potential. I mean, what is more wonderful in this industry than seeing younger people have the light bulb go off in the middle of all of this and embrace something and they take a nugget that they heard from one of us and turn it into something different and something cool. And we need to promote those kinds of conversations, because if we do an age check on this broadcast, I'm not sure we're maybe not going to feel as good about that as we would 20 years ago. I'm just going out on a limb here. So I would love to see how this engages in future generations of enterprise people, And I love that when it happens.
So he's say 20, I think 30, but yeah, like somewhere in between. Let's call it even, you know. So I keep telling people, the funny thing is I keep telling people, I wish I could go back in time. And I used to say, I wish I could go back in time 20 years with what I know now. Now this year I'm saying, I wish I could go back in time 30 years with what I know now. And I know that in the next couple of years it'll be 40. So like, you know, AARP in the house. Yeah, fuck you, Brent. Anyways, but I mean, so Liz, do you really think that the new generation is prepared to have those conversations? I mean, you brought.
Oh God, no.
We haven't had conversations.
Oh God,
okay.
oh God, no.
So what's missing? What do we need to bring the new generations into these conversations?
I think that it's funny. All the conversations I have, especially, you know, and it doesn't matter which generation it is. So I'm not like calling out millennials or calling out Gen Z. I'm not doing anything specific like that. I just think that anytime you sit down and have these conversations, I always laugh that anytime I would sit down with my team, kind of, so before I joined Constellation, I always had big teams, right? And I'd sit down with the team, and there would always be that one person that was like, I love strategery. I could just see it running through their head. There would be like these big thought bubbles. And you'd be like, okay, this is going to be the person. They're going to totally bring up a counter argument. We're going to be talking about what we need to get done here. We're going to talk about what we're doing for a client. They're going to bring this up, and they'd be like, I think we should focus on social. I'm like, what the fuck? And it's really hard not to look at that really eager, anxious kid and just say, what the fuck did you just say? That was stupid as all hell, right?
Why?
But
Why
it's kind of hard because you like, they're so eager and they're like just sitting in front of you like, I came up with some strategery and it was amazing.
Yeah, but hold on.
I think, but no, hang on. You let me finish. You be quiet. So I think what happens is it's not so much the younger generation, it's us. It's the older generation. And we're now officially the older generation, right? Mm-hmm. Because what happens is we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. We don't want to say, I wouldn't want to say, holy shit, that was stupid, right? And there's a different way to say that, of course, but we have to be the ones. The bravery, I don't think, is for the younger generation. I am not reading your sticker. What does your Hello Kitty sticker say there? What is that?
Liz,
what is that? Rich,
my statement towards you. I was put you in a drag and then help people look for you.
Liz, you're aware enough.
There's an angry little Dominican in me that's going to come out. But hang on.
Can I just share a 20-second anecdote? Can I just share a 20-second anecdote to reinforce Liz's point?
Everyone cares, Esteban.
The 20-second anecdote is in a landmark moment for Diginomica about a year ago. We had someone resign to become an Instagram influencer. I kid you not. And so to your point, Liz, like how do you compete with that, right? Like how do you compete
with that?
It is
totally, but it's also us, and I think it's really easy for us. I mean, and I'll say this about me, like it's really easy for me to be like, these kids need to be brave. They need to come up and they need to step up and say what they want. You know, they need to point out the ridiculousness of all the things that we're doing. And I can challenge every single junior person on the team to be brave. But my problem is, when do I have to look in the mirror and tell myself I need to be brave and I need to re-articulate what bravery is? Because I need to be the one that says, wow, maybe the shit that I did was more about kowtowing to the norm than it was about bravery. So maybe I should let this kid say the ridiculous, go off and be an Instagram influencer. I don't know. You know, when am I the one that needs to take a look in the mirror?
But you know, when you and I had the conversation earlier this year on charlatanism, and your statement was that we need more people that call out the things that people are afraid to call out. So I agree with you. But so then, I mean, I don't know if you have something you want to say, Alan, because I see you there, like I'm struggling to say
I did.
Don't be shy with this crowd. You got to jump in.
Well, what Liz was saying, you recognize when someone has a good idea. I think that one of the challenges is there's fear of change among people who said, well, we tried that, or that won't work, or I know better. And creating a space for innovation, and that's what I'll call it. It's innovation. Creating a space for innovation within more mature enterprises is just hard because it's a long game. You know, there's no if there was a quick, easy fix, we would have all done it already. But there isn't, and so it requires exploration and it requires sponsorship from people who have the power to make it happen. It's great to have an idea, but and it's great to even say, hey, okay, you're responsible for this, but if you don't have any authority to make change or to bring the resources or to get people on board or to get buy-in from the rest of your organization, you're not going to be able to figure out whether it'll work or not.
So let's take that comment, and then Brent, if you can put up that LinkedIn user, that thing. What Alan just said, right? We need to teach people how to be like rebels, basically similar to this. I mean, not the same words, but similar to this. But doesn't this contradict to, Lauren, since you probably have an insight on this, even if you don't, doesn't this contradict with the way most companies are operating, which is like, we don't have a place to be innovative. We don't have a place for anybody to be a rebel. We don't have a place for anybody to do anything. We just want you to keep your head down, do your job, and go home and become a salaryman, basically. You're seeing this. I mean, you're fighting this.
Of course, yes, and have left places as a result of me fighting this. So yeah, I mean, hello, black and blue, scars all over. Yes, I do think that we don't have the spaces to foster this type of action, this type of behavior. But I think that if you ask corporations if they do, they would say, yes, we've got an innovation club and we've got da-da-da-da. And they throw around those words, right? But they're not backed with any type, I know, right? They're not backed with any type of principles or, as you said, authority, accountability, agency. The fact that we can build something, we can do something. And if it fails spectacularly, we say, wow, what a great learning. We don't go, whoop, yeah, we are never trying that again. And for the next 20 years, that will be that is like banned forever, right? Or we've got, really cute greenhouses for, incubators and ideas, and they go nowhere because they are not, they're not exposed, to the institution's madness. And so I think we throw around the terms like innovation, creativity, etc., but we don't necessarily have the spaces for that to actually occur.
Yeah. By the way, that comment about we need to teach people to be rebels, I've just been notified, came from Bob Stutz, my former boss and mentor at SAP. So it makes sense, but it's like in a few words that I think he would have added if he would have been live on stage versus being written. So then, go back to you, John. I mean, you were talking about like having different conversations, different places. Isn't this what we're talking about? How do you actually, how do we generate information from these different places that can be used to make better decisions, which is what you and I have been talking about forever, right? So, yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think, like I said, I think LinkedIn Live discussions like this are a real high spot of this platform, and yeah, I mean, these are the kind of conversations I think we all seek to have, and when we're at events, and I write a lot about this, about how screwed up events are. We fight to have these conversations. A lot of times we have to squeeze them in hallways and after hours at bars in order to have the really good conversations, because events still aren't structured in a way to really bring those out properly. But yeah, these are the conversations that have to happen. And one of the things is the follow through. So that's why we don't just want to have one video show. That's why I asked where we're going to continue this, is because you don't want to just have a video show and go on your merry way. I mean, to Liz's point around we got to speak out more, you have to create a culture and a context around that makes sense to people so they can keep coming back and get support, advice, methodologies. Yeah. Can we bake this into a methodology? So how do we do this right now is really, really tricky, because we, in the algorithmic world that we live in, notice I didn't say the word, a lot of this stuff really gets marginalized, and we need to figure out how to change that. And while I think live video on LinkedIn does that, I'm not convinced that the everyday experience on this platform does that at all. I mean, my notification feed is just a disaster, and yours is too, because you can't get my articles off of it.
I swear to you, my Chrome browser on my iPhone put the face of that poor woman in front of me every time I went in the browser to see LinkedIn for 4 weeks, every single fucking time. It's a great article.
It's like, what the hell?
Oh
yeah, but
personalization.
Yeah. Well, I just laughed so hard because it was like they're showing you this article on Gen AI, like, and it's an interesting use case for sure. But like after you and I just had this huge argument where you were saying it's full of shit, and like, and that's the personalized experience you're getting on this platform, is being showed something again and again and again, and it's like we got to anyway. I just think that's a good conversation to have, how to continue this.
if you were to be into conspiracy theories, right? I mean, that came out at the same time that
Do we
Apple
know anyone
admitted
who's
that,
like,
but Apple admitted that they're listening to people's conversations in real time, and that's why you get like all the ads and all the promotions that you get. So I know that LinkedIn was listening to your conversation with me, and then they were like, oh, I'm gonna show you about LLM, bitch. It works.
it's all the time. But doesn't this kind of feel like, I hate to be that, well, so speaking of speaking up and being the naysayer, especially when we talk about innovation, Lauren, I had to crack up when you were talking about like, how do we create a space, and we create these greenhouses and we're gonna have an innovate. Do you remember, like, I had to just look it up. It was 7 years ago that IBM launched their ad campaign around the ridiculousness of what we do in corporate America around creating innovation stations. And it's the woman giving the tour to the guy who's we have innovation stations, and you can go in and you're going to release your, and then you open it up. It's a bunch of people on yoga mats, like taking a nap, and they're all like, that's their innovation station, right? I just kept thinking about that because I'm like, again, I mean, back to the top of what Lauren said, that we kind of keep having the same conversation and we call it evolved. The reality is, and again, I'm going to point out Lauren's great comment of, we don't institutionalize what didn't work. The 10 times in the past 10 years, we've tried to make it work so that we could look at that and be like, hey, let's try another thing that might not work. Right. So I think there's something to do with that. But I also think I'm going to pick on analysts for a second. I'm going to pick on my own people for a second. I also think that there are times that I watch my colleagues and I see myself doing it when we give advice to vendors and when we say, oh, this is what you should be telling the market and this is what the market's looking for. And then that's all you hear. I mean, I can hear things that I recommended to vendors 2 years ago. And I'm hearing them shout it from rooftops today. And I keep thinking to myself, it's been 2 years. Like, shout
here, Liz, here's a question for you. When I do innovation, how do I know if it's something that is worthwhile for my company? How do I figure that out? Let's do a new Coke. No, that doesn't necessarily align. Or let's come up with a product. And this is where I'm going to make Brent happy and talk about corporate narrative. You need a rubric and a guideline for, does this piece fit into what we stand for as a company or what we're trying to do as an organization, versus it's just a cool new gadget that we can play with, and maybe someone, and that happens in marketing, that happens in product development, it happens in communications, where, let's do a meme.
But it's almost like you have to redefine the what, right? Because, and this is something
you have to not redefine it. You have to define it. Most companies don't know what business they're in, Liz.
Exactly. But the problem is that they know what market slice they're in. They know how to describe the products that they sell, but they can't fundamentally answer the question, what does your customer?
They don't know how to describe the products they sell.
Buy anywhere else.
They don't know how to
they sell. No, they can talk about the thing they sell. They can't talk about the thing the customer buys, and that's the problem.
So just so you know, Lauren is making notes, which is
Lauren's got notes.
But further from that, this is going to come back in about 10 minutes to bite you in the ass, just so you know. But further from that, I like the comment of rubric and erase your hubris. How do you differentiate rubric from hubris? How do you differentiate, noise from signal, and true innovation that could go somewhere for innovation that doesn't go anywhere but adds to the conversation, and YMCA? What?
Oh, I'm not going to say it. There's someone out there.
That's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. That is not how you do it. Voldemort has nothing to do with this shit.
Lauren, what did you have to say? I want to hear Lauren's comment.
No, but I'm serious. I'm asking the question. How do you differentiate? I mean, if you're going to take on innovation, how do you differentiate innovation that delivers results, like you were saying, from innovation that moves the ball forward but doesn't deliver results? Once in a while, and trust me, I'm not a sports person, but once in a while, you need a good running play that moves you 2 yards forward. You don't need to, send a fucking Hail Mary 80 yards down the field, right? So how do you actually create a scenario where both of those are welcome?
But that metaphor is saying that we're working within the same paradigm. Like nothing, the rules of the game stay the same. And I think what Alan and John have said is that the rules of the game are no longer relevant, right? Because we are in the middle of societal collapse. Let's be real. I mean, I'm not saying, we're all going to die tomorrow. I'm not one of those folks. But what I am saying is we need to understand what is happening in the world, and our corporate cultures, our organizations need exposure to what is external. And when we think about what are those outcomes, they need to be tied to impact. How are we thinking about what we are building, what we are creating, what we are innovating, not for ourselves, not for the simple bottom line, not for what we think is cool, but what is going to help us generations ahead? And we're not having those conversations. And until that rubric.
No. So first of all, I want to appreciate Stessa saying that I'm doing the right thing here because nobody else does. So thank you, Stessa, for recognizing that.
Why did you have to go there?
Because we work together and she knows the real me. She knows the inner child. She knows the struggle.
We're not allowed to show any more comments that support anything Esteban says, Brett.
Now you got to type something real.
Before we go back to that great comment that Lawrence just made and destroy it in a second. Hey, birthday shout outs to the venerable Paul Greenberg.
Paul Greenberg, happy birthday!
It's a very young 22, so happy 22nd birthday. But let's go back to what you were saying, Laura. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but like, how do you get? Let's say young people, but put anybody in there. Seriously, change that to anybody. How do you get anybody, to recognize, what impact longer term is? And hey, I get quoted in newsletters, by the way. But how do you recognize? How do you teach younger and older generations what the long-term impact is versus like saving your job? And John has something he wants to say on this, so go ahead. No, I want Lauren to say
John,
because she threw it out there. She threw it and walks away. That's how it works. You gotta stay on cover. John, how do you actually teach the younger generations to recognize long-term impact?
How do you teach them that they're playing the long game?
Yes.
Well, I think one of the big things is putting a younger person in the room with someone that they admire. I remember meeting people when I was younger and I was like, I want to be just like you. And then to have the opportunity to find out how that worked for that person, what they got through. And this sort of culture of mentorship and such doesn't exist in most companies in a meaningful way. And that's a really, really big part of the problem because you have to have some idea of who you want to be when you grow up. And that helps a lot. But, I think, look, I mean, innovation's such a crap word. It's so hard to assess like what that really means. But I would say that on an organizational level, you do need what Alan talks about as far as incubator type spaces where people can take true risks, but then the things that win have to then scale. How many vendors do we know where they have these amazing little incubation labs, but nothing ever seems to come out of them? They're like places where ideas like go to die. And so then they have to scale up somehow. And then in the process, employees need to feel comfortable to really own that. And that's really the missing piece because we can talk about automation technologies all we want. The human talent has to feel empowered in some way to be a part of things. And like sometimes you have these guests on your programs, like Stutz is a great example because even when Stutz was at SAP, he had a very strong voice. And I remember in one big event challenging other vendors around pricing strategy, which is almost unheard of from an executive working at a company at that time. But how many people inside an organization feel confident that they can do that without getting, pulled across the carpet the next week? So there is such a thing as issuing guidelines that make sense, that give people a sense of what the limits are, but also how they can be vocal. This is not science fiction. You can create meaningful guidelines that allow people to know that they can be visible and vocal about certain things.
John, I talked to a multi-billion-dollar company who had an innovation lab and function. And one of the challenges that the people I was talking to spoke about is if they came up with an idea and it was a $10 million a year revenue idea, that wasn't even worth like paying attention to. 100 million maybe. Okay, it's $1 billion. And the challenge with that is that somebody else decided whether or not it had that long-term value, right? And that is like handcuffing it. It's like it's handicapping it before it even gets a chance to go off.
But we're talking about different things. I don't disagree with that, and every company has a threshold for that, right? Whether it's
no. But what I'm saying is, you need to going back to you need to make room. You need to create space for things that you don't know the answers to.
That was going to be my question. How do you do that? How do you make that room for that? Like, we don't know what this is going.
By willing to take a risk that I'm going to put money into this for 5 years, and it's not something that I'm going to get beat up at every board meeting. I'm going to get beat up on my quarterly earnings. But I feel like if I don't take those types of risks on a regular basis, I risk either being flat or going into obscurity. flat.
So
plans.
what if I build that model and nobody takes advantage of that?
Well, then you're not doing it right.
You probably have a bigger hiring problem. I mean, I think a lot of this is, are you hiring the people who want to take advantage of that space, or are you hiring people who make you feel comfortable that the bare minimum is just going to get done? And I'll use marketing as an example, right? I think a lot of marketers tend to hire teams that are willing to look at a 20% return on whatever their action or functional task is and call it a win, because the amorphous industry set that label. And the reality is we're not hiring the right people. Because if someone in an interview, let's look at how, I mean, Google and their reputation for how they hire. If you were shrunk down and how would you get out of Blender, and like asking questions like that.
Yeah.
Are you going to hire the person that's going to try to come up with the answer of that? Or are you going to hire the person that's like, don't fucking put me in a blender? Like, I think that for the people that we're talking about, that all of us are talking about, that are going to take advantage of that innovation, and they're going to want to actually do something different. They're going to want to challenge the norm. Like, if you want to go out and hire an Esteban, you're going to hire that person that said, that's fucking stupid. If I got into a blender, I'm dead. So what the fuck am I doing? Like, that's the person that you're probably going to want to hire, not the person's like, well, the ratios, the coefficient of the angle of the slope and the slip on the glass. That person spent way too much time thinking about themselves being tiny and trying to climb up a glass wall. Like, do you want that person? So I think a lot of this comes back down to hiring.
And I agree with Stefan. It boils down to, like, don't want to lose your job. But then, and I think that, it's good that you mentioned that, at least because to me, honestly, marketing is one of those places where, like, this is ripe for a fucking revolution, man. I mean,
oh yeah,
and then the question becomes, what's the horse and what's the buggy? Do you hire the people first and then build the scenario, or do you build the place that John will be happy to run for you and participate in, and then try to find the people to fit it in? Who comes first?
I think it's already too late if it's happening in the hiring, right? And I know that's not what we want to be talking about on this show, but
no, totally fine. No, I don't have. In case you haven't noticed, this show.
We have no agenda.
Dogma. We talk about anything, so it's fine.
You think there's something prescribed?
Yeah, it's a dogma.
As somebody who's been a lecturer, been an adjunct, taught these next generations, I got to tell you, we are packaging them in the same cookie cutter forms, and they go from one job to the next, and they are, caring about the survival of their job. They are, repeating everything that was, given to them, on a silver spoon. And
you wanted to say regurgitated. I did. Lauren, that you wanted to say regurgitated. Yeah.
Yes. And thank you, Liz. Thank you. You got me. You guys
need a room. We have sub rooms as part of streaming.
She feels seen.
I do. But I think we have to start with the youth and how are they being taught? What's in the curriculum? How are they being exposed to new ideas? And how are we as organizations, not just in job fairs, how are we, getting out there and showing what does real work look like? Not these beautiful crafted case studies where nobody learns anything, but like, what are the real consequences of X? What happens when we work at the intersection of X and Y? What are these things that come out of this experiment, this innovation? What does failure actually mean? How do we get comfortable with failure in that particular environment before we move into the corporate environment? Our folks aren't prepared. Even if we hire the people that say, I don't want to be in a blender, that's awesome. That's a great first step. But that doesn't mean they can survive in the spaces that we've created or
in the blender.
In the blender.
So I see you being the person who gets hired to ask those questions. Who's going to answer those questions? Who's going to answer those questions? Who do you talk to and you say, hey, what does failure mean? What does innovation mean? What does success mean? Let's programatize, let's program that into existence, and then let's go hire the right people. Who's the person who
is part of the problem was we're looking to answer that question? Because I kind of feel like
tell me who in the organization cares about this.
But I think part of what I've heard Lauren say, and I'll also say this is it's also part of what I've heard from Alan and from John is that we may be spending a lot of time trying to figure that pathway out and not actually doing it. And I think that a lot of us, and I think that there are, I think that there are some organizations where that's never going to happen. Esteban, you and I both know a lot of those organizations, right? Where no matter how much you try to push that, change up the hill, you're Sisyphus every single time. But I was just going
to rephrase the challenge, because I think I've heard it here already, which is you don't bring into innovation into an organization by hiring people who are innovative. You have to create a space where people who are innovative can come and be successful. And if you're in a private company, it could be the CEO. But if you're in a public company, it's complicated. It's the CEO. It's the board. You have to sell the story to your investors. It's a narrative issue because it's a long-term play that you're not going to see the results on that quarterly earnings report. And that's the challenge. You have to create the space first before you bring the innovators in. You have to for them to.
Yeah, but then we go back to what Simone is saying. I mean, we create the space, but then when you hire people, they want to know how much they're going to be blamed when everything goes fucked up, right?
But then you haven't created the space. If they're going to be blamed when something goes wrong, then you haven't created the environment and the space for that, right? So startups. I've been working with a lot of startups, and one of the beauties of startups is that because there's so many things going on, they don't have time to worry about a lot of the minutia that big companies worry about. It's like, well, that didn't work. Let's try something new. Let's try this. Let's try that. Let's keep going until we find something. Let's measure it. Let's try it, measure it. If it works, let's double down. If it doesn't work, let's do something else. And it's a quick. They create an environment for people to come in and experiment and innovate because it provides value to them in their journey. For big companies, there's less perceived value for innovation, and there's a lot of perceived value for status quo. So why would I go for innovation?
What's the ratio there then? I mean, is the ratio 90% assume status quo, 10% innovation, 70-30? Is there like a ratio or something that you found to be like
It's not. It doesn't matter. Where's the value? It could be 1% for your company. If I create a space for 1% innovation, that's enough for me in my industry to be able to continue to grow and be successful. Other industries, it might be 50%. If I'm not rapidly innovating on a regular basis, then I'm going to fall behind in a year. So I think it really depends on how innovation. If I'm in financial services and I'm not innovating on a regular basis, I'm going to have somebody's going to eat my lunch, right? Because it's a very competitive business. They rely heavily on technology and innovation to keep an edge, right? But I'm not going to. I don't want to call anybody out in terms of less innovative, or where innovation is less valuable. But I'm just saying that's an example of maybe they have to have 30 or 40% versus a shipping company. Maybe there's not a lot of innovation in shipping. It's really just moving stuff from point A to point B. I can get margins of, if I get a 1% or 2% increase in efficiency, I'm making good money.
I also think a lot of people, it's kind of like innovation is a lot like transformation, and it feels like a really big word. And so when people sit down and they're like, I'm going to come up with some good innovation today, you're like, whoa. Like, okay, everybody, like if you can just, and I think Alan, to your point, if you can make space, you can make small space for small change. You can make big space for big change. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. I think that as an individual, like if everyone who was listening to this show and everyone who's sitting out there going like, yeah, we do have to change something. If that person can then turn around and just decide, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to create a small space because that's the space I control. I control small spaces. So I'm going to have the small space to let people have small ideas. It doesn't always have to be big. It's not about like innovative.
But how do you?
No, wait.
Okay.
Liz has a great point there, which actually I think may be the best path to innovation. Managers need to, within your team, you have a team of one person to two people. Are you making space for people to innovate? are you, if they make a mistake, do you throw them under the bus because you don't want to get lost, and so it takes courage to run interference for your team, to protect them, I always said to anybody, nobody yells at my team, they yell at me, I'll yell at them, right? But are you protecting them, and are you allowing them to take the risks that you think are important? And so you're essentially giving, at that space at a micro level, and you could do that today.
John's got thoughts.
So just real quick, just to add to what you're saying, I think unfortunately we live in a KPI culture now, and so to Alan's point around measurement, the only way to, if you're going to start small, it's vitally important that you measure things in the right ways and that you measure the right things, because one of the big mistakes is that we just measure what we can measure, not what the most important things are. And some of the most important things are very, very difficult to measure, right? And especially if you encourage risk taking and stuff like that, what happens when someone does take a risk and suggest an idea, but that idea gets shelved or it doesn't happen, and so they don't get credit for this other thing that happened, but they help foster this great conversation. Like, so how are you going to reward people for participating in various ways? Like, you have to figure all of that out, because if you can't do that, then when you scale up, you're scaling up for the wrong reason sometimes. So
I'm going to ask a question. I'm not going to make the joke that I was going to make because it would get me canceled even with the disclaimer. But how do you go from small to big? You only asked me a question, so I have to say it. So
it's like we all collectively had that same thought of we know him, and we
know what it is, but I don't want to get canceled. So how do you go from small to big? It's a good question,
that's what ChatGPT is for, brother.
I thought you said that's what ChatGPT said, which would have been a much
4.0 only. 4.0. Not 3.5, 4.0. Yeah.
You can already use that fucking shit.
Oh my God.
You got to pay for it. Seems like the wrong answer for his.
ChatGPT is the Viagra of ideas. ChatGPT is the Viagra of ideas.
Yikes.
Okay. Anyway, seriously, how do you go from
small to big? You got to pay for
it.
You got to pay for it.
You don't pay for it. No, seriously, somebody says something interesting and intelligent. How do you go from small to big? How do you start with a small group that innovates and scale that to the whole enterprise? Simone says gently and with focused effort.
Storytelling. Storytelling. You just like you would with any customer case study. You do something, and then you have to make sure that you're telling a good a good story about how it happened, why it was successful, what were the challenges that happened during the process, and what is the impact now, and what is the potential impact down the road. Tell a good story.
Before we go anywhere, thank you, Brent. We'll see you later. Appreciate you coming and join us, and thanks for the help with the show, which was completely off the chain. But
and then invite other people. I mean, like the thing is like I think when a lot of people try to bring innovation into their team or into their function, those rock solid walls still exist around those perimeters. I think that if you can start, like if you're having a great time, if you are running a team, and we've all seen this, right? If you're running a team that's coming up with new ideas, that's doing fresh things, that's actually implementing change, where people are happy, they're excited to have those difficult conversations. People outside looking through those windows, they want to be involved in those conversations too. So invite them. Invite people to come in. Like, hey, what do you think? Hey, bring it on over.
But here's another piece of that, Liz. I've seen teams within organizations work really hard to build something that never worked. No leader ever came out and said, hey, this team, this is what they did. This is what they were trying to accomplish. This is what we learned from it. And thank you, and I appreciate the effort that you took. Now they're going to go on to their next.
But that's the problem. That's a problem with KPI culture, though, because they got punished by KPIs for that. Right. So how do you compensate for that? It's a really important organizational decision.
KPI culture sounds like kryptonite to me, but that's a whole different conversation.
100%, dude. But we're stuck in it now.
It does.
Why can't we go out of it? Why do we need to stay the same fucking KPIs we have for 40 years that never worked before?
What are you doing in January? You want to come back again? That might take an hour.
Let's do it. I mean, it's going to be March at this point because I got all the shows filled for January and February. But let's have the conversation because I agree with you that KPI culture is poison. I mean, it's what
if you have all those shows filled, then your KPIs are wrong for Whispered Insights.
Yeah, we got to revisit those KPIs.
I can't. You know how long it takes you to find somebody, have them agree to be on the show, then like find the fucking date, have them commit to it, and then change it doesn't work. You know, so. Unfortunately.
All I hear is blah, blah, blah. I don't understand.
Oh, this is better? They say a picture is 1,000 words, so there you go. You know. But then,
and how do you make that grow?
How do you go from small to big is the question.
How do you go?
It's funny that I'm not good. But I have another joke that I cannot do. Anyways, we got 3 minutes.
One really good clue there is adoption. Like do other people embrace what it is you're doing easily, or do they need hours and hours of training and slide decks and everything else to catch on? Because the one thing about like the enterprise we learn again and again is the stuff that really sticks to the wall is not that hard for people to pick up and start mastering and start using. Sorry, it just isn't that hard. And, you know, we're seeing it again with the latest round of stuff. And we saw it with the pressure that mobile devices put on enterprise work as well. Like, so one of the best things, if you want to scale something, is make it easy for people to wrap their heads around how it's going to help them. And they can just pick it up and use it. If you have to schedule like long training sessions, you're on the wrong track.
Easy to understand, but not necessarily stripping out the complexity, right? Because that's we can't strip out the nuance. We can't strip out the complexity.
I call that revealed complexity, and that's my favorite design principle.
I love
rather than lobotomizing the complexity, which is the way. Unfortunately, that's the way we're going. Is we're taking a shortcut and lobotomizing the complexity instead of revealing it. But that's another show also. You're going to be busy this spring.
I think that's the theme of the show, lobotomize complexity.
New name.
That's my band's name. Lobotomize complexity.
But reveal complexity. I've heard Neil Radin talk about that too.
Anyways, we have 2 minutes, which means we come to the part of the show that I love, which is predictions. So I'm kidding.
Oh, thank God.
Actually, we got 2 minutes, but I got 2 minutes. There's one thing I want to get from you, all of you, seriously. I want you to think about it, and I'll go first so you have time to think about what you want to do. What's the one word for 2024 that you're going to put all your effort, all your emotions and everything to make sure that it gets moved forward? Like we said in the show, we need shit to move forward. We need to innovate. We need to do all this stuff. What's the one word that exemplifies where you're going to put all your efforts and talents and everything in 2024? My word is transmedia, because I think that thing is going to change the way we do everything. I know. But I'm not asking to judge it. I'm asking you to have your own word and say it. And since you're an asshole, I'll let you go first.
I want you to define transmedia for me, so that way I understand.
We're gonna have the conversation next year. I'm telling you what the word is, fucking asshole. Just answer the fucking question.
We'll just off that USC lecture from '85 momentarily.
Oh my God, you guys. Seriously, what's the one word?
So mine is related, Esteban. I'll say, and it's my mantra is corporate narrative is. Can you articulate what business you're in, why you exist, what do you have to give to the world? What does your business have to give to the world? And then get everybody on board with that corporate narrative.
Somebody's offending you, by the way, just so you know.
And
I paid him for that.
I'm gonna go back to my earlier word on Alan's, which is counter narrative. I think we need to build a compelling counter narrative to the existing stale narratives, and that goes both inside and outside company walls.
Liz?
I kind of keep coming back to content because it's getting redefined every single day. It's getting redefined in really meaningful ways by people who consume it. Yet no one seems to be ready to actually deliver what and how people want to consume. So I think that content is something that I'm going to talk a lot about, certainly for 2024. But it's also something that I have to think about for 2024 because I've got to change the way I think about it, the way I pull it together, what I deliver. So it's going to be one of those obsession points.
So Simone says emerging, and then Lauren, you have the final word on this. What's the word?
Memory. What choices are we making in our collective memory? Who's making those choices? Who's shaping those? I think it goes with all of your words, but in essence, what is the what are the stories, what are the feelings, what are the essence of what we're bringing forward from one moment to the next, and why.
Okay. Well, I mean, just so you know, since I had the final word as a host, if any of you bitches and take him off the stage, I think that all that shit happens in one single channel or one combination of channels called transmedia. And with that, thank you everybody for being here this year. Thank you to my wonderful co-host. Thank you for letting me have the last word. But thank you for being here. Thank you for the wonderful conversations. We'll have many, many, many more next year. And if there's anything you want to say, you got 30 seconds. And if not, we should be out. Anybody? No? Last?
Just
no?
thank you and Happy New Year.
Thank
Happy
you.
It was
New
great
Year,
to
you
be on the
guys.
end.
Oh, yeah. And because I'm old, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Ooh.